Hey guys, it's Athena here. For today's video, I wanted to sort of discuss a little bit about the hardships of being transgender and sort of what my experience as a transgender woman has been, a transgender individual, um, as well as relating into my human experience as a person. Um, I think what first jumps out in my mind, there's, so many things about being transgender that I would love to talk about. Sorry for the bird in the background. He's like, I want to shout out. There's a lot of complexities. It really is an umbrella term, and it's a whole universe to delve into. And I don't know where my mind will take me, but I just kind of want to go on a little bit of a mental odyssey of and just talk about a few transgender related experience topics and things like that. So, a really important thing that jumps out to me is sort of like being born in the wrong body and what that feels like. Um, for my personal experience, I knew that something was wrong ever since I was very, very little. I was very, very effeminate, very, girly, and was always drawn towards female geared things, Barbies, fairy tale, dress up heels, like the plastic heels and dresses and cheerleading outfit, like costumes. I loved costumes so much. When I was in preschool, the costume trunk was my favorite thing, and I would always like to wear dresses. And I remember a very specific memory. There was this little girl that had a crush on me when I was little. I forget her name. I think it was like I can't remember her name, but I remember I had picked out a dress from the treasure chest, and she was like, "Oh, that's a beautiful dress for me," and I was like, "Oh, well, I wanted to wear it," and so just things like that, and I remember there was a time at a preschool I was at where I finished my lunch like really fast so that I could go play dress up, and it I did feel at that time that there was something off with liking those things. The other boys weren't drawn towards those things. I have a very vivid memory of when I was in preschool that I guess I had seen the very first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, and I think that his name was RJ, and I was on the slide, the play set, and I was on a slide, and he was holding on to me, and I was like, "Don't let go," and then he would let me go, and I'd go down the slide, and I asked him to do it, and it was weird because he was I think he was kind of embarrassed, he liked playing the game, but he's like, "I'm only gonna do it one more time, I don't want people to I guess I don't know. I guess he felt kind of weird about it because I was another boy, so it was kind of awkward for him. Um, and but I just remember those types of things. But anyways, so I always knew that something was kind of off, and I never felt comfortable with masculine clothing or identifying as a boy or anything like that. It was very much and I would get mixed messages from my family. When I was a lot younger, I think, and all my family knew that I was trans. Everybody knew growing up, but I don't think they really knew what being transgender was. I think they had only really heard of it. I was born in 1998, and we're in Pennsylvania in a, you know, kind of a small town. It's not being transgender wasn't really talked about. That wasn't really a thing. Hi, Stella. Um, that wasn't anything that was ever, a conversation. And I don't think that people ever I didn't even know that you could be trans until I was about 13. I used to go on this site called Glogster, and it was a creative site where you could make these posters and stuff, and I met a girl that said that she was going to school as a female but was born male, and that and Lady Gaga's Born This Way song, where she talks about no matter gay, straight, or bi, lesbian, transgender life, I'm on the right track, baby, born to survive. When she said those lines, it's no matter black, white, or gay, it's like transgender. I'm trying to remember, but that song was like one of the first things that I had heard of that term, and I didn't really know what it meant. So then, when I was the summer of when I was 13, I figured out that there was such a thing as being trans, and that you could be born in the wrong body, and that growing up, I just always thought that I had to be gay, and that was something like when I was about maybe, I would say, 12 years old. I think that that was when I was identifying as, noticing to myself that I always liked men. Whenever there were, like boys and stuff, I wasn't ever attracted to girls. And I just figured, I didn't know that you could be transgender. I didn't know that I could be a girl and that was in the wrong body. I always felt like, I remember my 8th grade year, that year I lived with my grandmother, and I just remember feeling so cursed, and like I was just cursed, like there was something truly wrong that happened to me to be born in a boy's body, because I didn't connect with it at all. And even earlier than that, sorry, all these things start like jumping out because it's not something I really get to talk about or share. But I remember when I was in 5th grade, I was sitting in line at like the cafeteria thing, and I was waiting to go in for like our grade's lunch, and there was my neighbor. Her name was Ashley, and she was in front of me by this tree, and the light was like streaming down. And she's a beautiful young girl, like totally beautiful. Um, and I just saw that she was playing in the sun, and I could see the light in her hair, and she was laughing and smiling and just like running around. And I think she might have even been playing with toys, and she was like, I think 2 years younger than me, 2.5 years younger. And I remember just being the most extreme amount of envy ever in my life. I felt so envious of her. Like, I can even feel that feeling in my chest talking about it. Like, I looked at her and I was like, I want more than anything. I'd give more than anything to be her and have her life. Um, and and I just feel that in my chest right now, even talking about it. I remember that feeling. And then again in 8th grade, when I felt that as well, that I totally felt like I was cursed, like something just went wrong. I was born this way, like that I'm very feminine and I don't connect with being a boy. And like, it was felt really damning, like I was just, cursed. And so once I figured out I could be transgender, that felt validating, and I felt like, okay, this makes sense. I'm so happy this exists. There's other people out there like me. I'm not the only one. So that was sort of like my like childhood like experiences and stuff. Like there were bad experiences as well. I know those are good ones, but I remember like it was Halloween time, and my dad's grandmother, her name's Cheryl, or my dad's mom's name is Cheryl, but she's my grandmother, but I call her Nina. I remember there was this country club that they were a part of, and I was really young. I was probably 5 years old, and I wore a princess dress to the country club. And I remember that we went down to like, it was just the kids, and we all went down to this lake, and there was like this little lake, and then someone had picked a dead fish out of the water, and then they put it down my dress, and like they were all laughing at me and stuff. And that I remember that like really hurt my feelings, and I like cried and like ran back inside. And then I was approaching Nina. I like, there was someone had spilled something, and I like slipped with my dress and I fell, and I just was really embarrassed. But I remember that, and always sort of like being, you know, taunted or teased for, being feminine, and all that kind of stuff. So that was sort of like my childhood experiences. And it was definitely mixed messages from family. When I got older, I remember my stepdad was kind of like, I'm ready for you to grow out of this. Like, you don't want to be made fun of. You don't want people to laugh at you. Like, it's time to stop having pink. I remember I wanted a pink, fluffy bed comforter when I was like 9 and a half. I was just about to go into 5th grade. And I went to preschool, I went to kindergarten, and then my mom ended up homeschooling me. She wasn't working. She was a single, not a single mom, housewife. She was a housewife while my stepfather was like out. He was the breadwinner, and my mom was like painting a lot, and so I was homeschooled at that time, and so I didn't have any exposure to what other people would like think of who I was until 5th grade. But I did notice stuff when I was really young, but not to the extent of when I was in 5th grade. Um, so I remember my stepfather saying, like, I don't think we're not going to get you the pink bed comforter. I thought you said that you could grow out of this and that it's just a phase. And, people in my family would like sometimes buy Barbies, but like I wasn't allowed to play with them. That was a whole other thing. Like when I was really young, I was allowed to play with them. And then I was allowed to play with them when I went over to friends' houses and stuff, but it was never like, let's take Athena to the Barbie aisle and let her pick, and my grandmother did do that sometimes. I have a couple distinct memories, but then it was sort of like they were just meant to be looked at and not touched or played with. And I don't think that that was necessarily like them trying to punish me, but it was almost sort of like you can like Barbie, but it's a secret and you're going to collect it and like keep it in the box. And I don't know, like, I think because I also used to, like, kids experiment and, like, destroy stuff and cut the Barbie's hair and put Sharpie on their faces, and I did a lot of that as well. I wasn't always, like, totally, delicate with my dolls and stuff. I definitely would, like, I think I had, if we're looking at it from a psychologist perspective, perhaps I've had anger, and I would take the anger out on the dolls to sort of alleviate that. And another interesting thing is that I've always been, I know the word drawer doesn't exist as drawer in like English Standard Dictionary, but people are always like, you're such a good drawer, and I'm like, thank you. But for the sake of this video, let's pretend the word drawer exists in the universe. So I've always been drawing since I was, like 4 or 5 years old, and I always was drawing girls. I always drew girls. That's what everyone knew me for, like the family and everything. And I would just always be drawing these really elaborate, beautiful, whimsical girls. And that was just hundreds of them as I was growing up and from childhood. And I have tons of them that I can show you guys. So I think from in a psychological context, that it was me expressing something, and it kind of gives me chills to think about it, just that like it was the only thing I ever wanted to draw. It was what I was most comfortable, and by nature girls are a little bit more fun to draw than boys because you can be really creative. I think now the context is a little bit different. Like boys are allowed, not that they're allowed to, but the nature of being a boy has expanded a lot in the last like 5 years, especially. So like when I was growing up, like there wasn't like vivid color options for clothes, or like, sort of neutral gendered toys, or like, feminine boy things. It was all very like Tony Hawk, like, aggressive, like monster trucks and like deep dark colors and G.I. Joe and all that stuff. So, what was I going to say? So, anyways, drawing girls by nature, you can have like the long hair and the bright colors and the dresses and all that. So that's why another thing, I think I was just so creatively drawn towards girls. But I think from a psychologist perspective, that was definitely something I was trying to convey but didn't have the words for. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess this video would sort of be like, I'll have this sort of maybe as like my early experiences. But, it's been such a long and difficult journey. The road of self-transformation and self-discovery and all of that has definitely not been easy in any way. I think at the beginning of this video I was going to talk about like hardships and stuff, but I don't know, it's a whole thing to get into, and like there's so many layers to different things, right? Let me move my location because the sun's kind of obstructing. Okay, guys, so I am back. Um, so specifically, you know, hardships. I don't know if I should include that in this video. I don't know if it should just be like things as a kid that are sort of the experiences and stuff, because I think it's important to have a good backstory before I start, getting into everything. But, then once I was in my teen years, so when I lived my life as a boy up until my ninth grade year. And during the summer of eighth grade was when I identified as Athena. That's when I went by that name. My birth name was Ethan. So Ethan, Athena, it's a little, it wasn't a conscious thing. It wasn't like, pick a name of a Greek goddess or anything. It was really, I heard it in one of the YouTubers that I watched, one of her videos, and she had talked about a girl that was named Athena, and she was a drag queen, and that was sort of my first taste of, you know, like the sort of female impersonation like kind of thing. And that's where I learned a lot of my knowledge from this one drag queen who's now a trans woman. Misty Eyes was her name, and Misty is her name. And also my mom agreed. I think we were talking about names and stuff, and Athena stuck out. And Athena and Ethan are kind of like if you switch the letters and stuff. And a lot of trans people, not all, do, especially if they're feminizing or masculinizing their name. Um, so it's sort of the letters like rearranged a little bit. But it never was like, oh, Athena, the Greek goddess. Like, it wasn't to name myself after a goddess. I think if I was like really like gonna name myself something to be like, I'd pick my name to be Barbie or something. But yeah, so that was when I first was able to be Athena, was the year of my eighth grade summer, and that was when I first started growing out my hair, wearing women's clothes, jewelry, getting my nails done, things like that, embracing that whole life. And so before I started my ninth grade year, there was a psychologist, her name was Famika, and Famika saw me when I was a kid, when my parents were getting marriage and family counseling and stuff, when my stepfather and my mom were getting counseling. And so I had developed a really close relationship with Famika, and I really liked her, and she was just a very interesting woman. Um, she was very eclectic and always very kind and nice to me, and I just felt like very safe with her. And I hadn't talked to her for a while, but we went and got a special letter written before I started my ninth grade year in high school. I was just going to go as Athena. I wasn't going to go as Ethan or be marked as a male or anything like that. I was totally just going to go to school as female Athena. That's it. No questions asked. And we wanted to figure out how to do that. So we went and got a letter written up about, it's really important for Athena to be called Athena on seating and role and, all of that, and to be completely female and all of that. And my whole school experience will be another video, but basically from ninth grade on, I've lived my life as Athena, and so that's been since I was, I'll just say 14 to 21, so 7 years. It's been 7 years. So mentally 7 years old, right? No. That's something interesting too. Like, I never got to go through the phases, I think, that I wanted to go through, or that most young girls go through. Like having your boy crazy phase when you're like, 13 years old. I feel like I'm having that now when I'm 21, and like, everything is boy crazy, boy hungry, like just like very silly puppy love kind of stuff all the time, like very much something you would associate with like a 14-year-old girl. And not to say that mentally I'm 14, but I think in some ways, like, if you never get to allow a certain pathway in your mind to develop, you're starting at a much earlier place than other people. So technically, I could be a lot more regressed, um, age wise, than a lot of other girls my age. But I don't really find that that's the case when I'm talking to people. Like, there are a lot of girls that boys are their whole world at 21 and, older, and I don't think it's that far out. But there are certain things like, and also getting into like aesthetics and things. I think that, I remember wanting to pick out school supplies that was very feminine and glittery or pink, like it, and it couldn't be that because I would just get bullied at school for anything that I had. I even had this like blue and tan lunchbox, and it was like, it looked like a purse, but it wasn't. It was just the handle, and it was sort of like, it looked like a purse would with a handle, but it was a lunch like box. And I remember that I got teased about that, and so, not knowing how to deal with those things and not understanding why people would make comments and stuff, like I didn't know why they had to be like that or had to call me like, a faggot, pardon my French, but always being called like gay or faggot or queer, um, you know, all that kind of stuff, or like a pansy, things like that. Those were all words and terminology that were always sort of around me. Um, and so now, ever since I've been able to express myself, I feel like, identifying with Barbie, it really, sort of the psychology of it is very interesting because I think to me, Barbie represents a very widely accepted version of what a female looks like and what is idolized in Western society as like the pinnacle girl, is the all-American girl, is blonde hair, blue eyes, tan skin, whatever. And so that archetype, I would always see girls in school that fit that archetype, and I always so deeply wanted to be like them, and I felt very envious. And there were a lot of girls that didn't fit that archetype that I really liked and thought were very beautiful. But I think that it's a common phenomenon in transgender women to emulate dolls or to emulate Barbie or to emulate female, overly done up, superficial female aesthetics because it's sort of trying to obtain something. It's sort of trying to compensate and make up for something and to really indulge in something that you've never been able to indulge in your whole life. So now that you can, it's kind of like, you go crazy and you just want to be the most feminine you can. So I think, and it's a widespread phenomenon. That's why a lot of trans women, identify with like Barbie or identify with like mermaids and Ariel and all these sort of like very glamorous sort of things. And you know identifying with things is a whole other video I wanted to make. I know Ariel is mermaids in general. Mine, of course, is Madison from Splash, but a lot of trans girls name themselves Ariel or have a huge obsession with mermaids because it's sort of that like part of your world, like wanting to be like everybody else, being different, not being able to find love, having a secret or having something special about you that isn't common, and things like that, or being misunderstood, and the struggle of wanting to be able to find love, and all these types of things. So it's very easy and comforting to identify with mermaids or things of that nature. And so I think that explains a little bit where all of the and in general, like, it's not that to say that it's like forced or anything, because as a girl, you're allowed to be whatever expression of a female that means to you. There are a lot of women that do not classically identify with Barbie at all. Sometimes that is the antithesis of what a woman is and what a woman represents, and Barbie doesn't mean that that's what being a woman is. There's there's not a list of definitions as to what a woman should look like, be like, talk like, anything. um, I think that Barbie is a formulated by society concoction of a lot of archetypes and societal standards all built into one female identity rather than being what a female is. So it's just a lot of preferences of, that aren't even positive, that can be very negative, all bottled into one identity. So I wasn't always very Barbie related. I remember that in high school I had a period where I started high school with brown, kind of like my natural hair color being brown. Then I went with a jet black look. I had jet black hair, and I wore like very, not dark clothing, but like grays and like earth tones, and it wasn't very overly feminine at all. It was very subdued, and I didn't wear like tight clothes sometimes. But when I started high school, I was very girly. Then I went through a phase where I didn't really want people to even recognize me. I just totally wanted to be like not even commented on, because I remember that I would wear really flamboyant outfits, like high heels to high school, and I'd walk around in heels, and like it wasn't really something that people did. So I always got a lot of attention, a lot of negative attention for that. Sometimes people would say like, wow, I think you're really cool. I think that's awesome that you do that. Like, I give you a lot of credit. Or I really like your style. But I was very much, I like to have fun with my clothes, be very girly. But then I went through the phase where I wanted to sort of be very understated, not bring a lot of attention. And I remember one time I was wearing this sweater and like these baggy jeans, and I was probably like 16 years old. And he was like, I can't even tell that you're a girl. Like, I can't see your body at all. And that was sort of like, it was hurtful. Like, it definitely felt like, someone was shaming me for not showing off like my body at all. But I think by nature, through my experiences, have been very insecure. So it was interesting to hear that, that the clothes I was wearing weren't being complimentary to me, whatever that means, like his definition of complimentary. And then I came out of that, and I was sort of just more neutral, and I was, dipped my toe into a lot of different things. But then really, the sort of like blonde everything came back full force once I was getting rid of the dark hair. I wanted to go back to being blonde. I wanted to embrace the Barbie look and aesthetic and all of that. And then it just sort of mixed in with my discovery of Daryl Hannah in Splash, and that aesthetic of having long blonde hair, and of course Barbie, of course all these things, like all the people I identified with growing up. I always liked the most feminine characters. Like even, I don't know, like Thumbelina and like Cinderella and like all these, and even like in the Crash Bandicoot games, there's like a blonde girl, and like I really liked her when I played those games, and like I always was drawn to the most feminine girls as a kid. So I sort of wanted to reflect that and embody that later on in life. And that's sort of where I'm at. And then it sort of turned into an identity crisis, to where I'm like, what does representing that aesthetic mean to me? Is that my identity? Is it original? Is it really who I am as a person? There's a lot of different questions that comes to play in as I get older and I evolve and grow more and more. So it's all very interesting, but and really complex. And I just hope that this video is a good first, splash in the pool of what my life and human experience as a transgender human being is. And I hope you guys enjoy. And I'd love to do a Q&A video. If you guys would like me to do a Q&A video, please ask me questions. No question is a bad question if it's coming from a curious, honest place. If, you can ask me about body parts, sex, relationships, intimacy, clothing, how to wear certain clothing to mask your male genitalia, you know, all different kinds of things, ways of styling yourself, or, you know, all of those types of things I'm completely open to, as long as you're open-minded as well. And I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.